Hello, I'm Frost and welcome to my top 10 beginner tips for Phoenix Point that will hopefully help you out. Tip number 1 is load up your backpack. That means medkits and grenades. The good news is that medkits you can build instantly. Grenades generally take 5 hours until you build more fabrication plants, and then you can speed up the process. Grab as many medkits as you can and probably a couple of grenades as well. The reason why you want to add grenades is because sometimes your unit will use 2 hands for a weapon. If an arm gets disabled, then they can still throw grenades and they're still useful. Medkits goes without saying, they will come in very handy, and also once again, if your unit is disabled and can't shoot or has run out of ammo, then you have the ability to be a field medic. Tip number 2 is stay close but not too close. What that means is that you want to stay within your blue zone of each other. So you can move to one of your friendly units and perform an action such as use a medkit. But you don't want to be too close because some of the Pandorans will have things like grenade launchers and can do area of effect damage. And if your units are all bunched together, then they're all going to take damage, and that's going to be catastrophic. Tip number 3 is look after your troops. Now this may seem obvious, but in a lot of games your units are disposable and can be easily replaced. This is not the case in Phoenix Point. It takes time to level up your units and you only have a few of them. So when you do lose a unit, you're kind of back to square one, having to start with a rookie. So you really want to look after units. And what that means is don't be in a rush. Don't rush out onto the grid. Let them come to you. And as I've done here, make sure you set up your overwatches to cover the kind of all angles. So you can see I've got my assault units here. I've got one here, covering kind of the northeast side. I've got one of my snipers covering the west. I've got my dude down here just covering the bottom right hand corner. This way you make sure that you move as a whole unit, and that comes on to the next tip. So tip number 4 is know your units and use cover. So in other words, make sure that you know the range of your units. So for example, your snipers, you want to keep them back. They don't have to be right in the line of fire because they have great range, and make sure you always use cover. Cover is really, really important. It drastically reduces the amount of damage that is done to you in the right circumstances. What I mean by that is what you should be aware of with cover is that if, for example, an enemy is shooting a single shot, then the cover will only decide whether the shot has a chance to hit or not, which means that if you're under cover but you're not sufficiently covered and you get a hit, you will take the full damage. So it does not reduce your damage in every situation. It will do, for example, with someone shooting you with a machine gun or assault rifle, because then only some of the bullets will hit you. But for a single projectile, cover is only a chance to be protected. Tip number 5, focus fire. In other words, make sure that you aim for one opponent at a time. The sooner you get an opponent off grid, that opponent will then not be doing damage to you. So rather than spread your fire across multiple opponents, always go for one opponent at a time. Generally, you want to go in with your grenades first, which I'm going to come on to in my next tip, if they're close enough, and then followed by your snipers. So you do the initial damage. So let's, for example, take this sniper here, move him out, one move, take a shot. They generally do the most damage. And remember that you can use your action points again afterwards. And there we go, I can move back into cover. I can then take my next one, move him out. I don't know if I've got line of sight there. Let's check. No, let's move him out one more square. Take a shot. No, still not enough. I'm going to have to tuck him in behind this guy. Take the shot. And I haven't got any more movement points, so I'm going to make my assault guy take the shot, and then I'm going to take into account what I said in the previous tip, and I'm not going to keep him close. I'm going to make sure I tuck him in some different covers so I keep them slightly apart again. Tip number 6 is use your jetpack to scout. In other words, anyone that's got a jetpack, try and get them onto a higher building and get them quite close to the middle of the grid, so then that way you can get visuals on your opponents. And then that brings me on to the next tip. Tip number 7 is use grenades. Grenades should be used in the initial attack on your opponent as they strip away armor. Now the way that armor works is if you're going to do 50 points worth of damage to a unit and that unit has 20 armor, then you will only do 30 points worth of damage. If you reduce that armor from the beginning, every shot from you afterwards will then do hopefully more damage to the enemy. So in this case, I'm ready to throw a grenade. Boom. So -6 armor, -6 armor. So now every shot is going to do +6 on that opponent. And obviously you can try and stack that up if you can. One other thing to bear in mind with grenades is your guy with the jetpack, if you want to make him really useful, get the Goliath grenade launcher for your heavy unit. That way he can sit on top of buildings and he can just lob grenades at will as an opening parry on every turn, making sure that you reduce the amount of armor once again. Tip number 8 is use the right weapon on mine fraggers, or things can go very, very badly wrong. When one of your units has been attacked by a mine fragger, your first choice of weapon should be the handgun, as this is the least likely to do damage to your friendly unit. Second choice is the sniper rifle, but at close range the sniper rifle can do some damage. Try to not use shotguns or hand cannons, as your buddy will not be happy with you at all. Tip number 9 is use your Phoenix points for rookies. So try to hold back those Phoenix SP that you're building up as you're completing various missions for when you recruit a new soldier. This way you can immediately make your soldier less likely to die in his first encounter by taking the Phoenix points and assigning them to strength. That will just help them get by their first few missions so they're not too squishy. And finally, a bonus tip. And my bonus tip is the Scarab. Do not waste your resources getting a Scarab early game. It is really not worth it, and I'm going to explain why. Before I do that though, the first thing you'll notice is that whilst it looks really cool, you can see on the right wheel here we've got a Phoenix Point logo. Unfortunately, when you spin it round, you will see they've mirrored the wheel to the left, but they didn't bother rotating the logo. I don't know about you, but that really triggers me. But that isn't the real problem with the Scarab. The first issue we have with the Scarab is if I add it to my Manticore, as you can see I have 3 units only in my Manticore at the moment, and I then go to personnel, I now can't add any more units because the armoured personnel carrier, the Scarab, takes 3 spaces in your Manticore. So you halve the number of units that you can actually take into battle, and therefore you halve the amount of DPS you can do. And you say, well, the Scarab can do loads of damage, right? Yes, it can, but only in a limited way, because the Scarab only has 10 missiles, and it uses these in groups of 2. So you get 5 shots. Once you're done with the 5 shots, then you just have a big object and nothing else. On top of that, the missiles are really inaccurate. So the first missile generally kind of lands on target. The second missile goes all over the place. So if you've got any objects around, like scavenging materials and tech, there's a good chance they're going to hit those as well and do damage to stuff that you don't want to. The only thing that I can do, say, for Scarab that's in its favour is that it's a really, really good cannon fodder. For some reason, the Pandorans love shooting at it, so it works as a good decoy. But if you try and move with it, it is hopeless. It just bounces off objects, it doesn't go through objects very well, it has limited range. It is basically a waste of time. So do not waste your tech and materials on a Scarab. Get more soldiers instead. All right, that wraps it up. I hope you found that useful. If you enjoy what I do, please like. If you don't, dislike. Please subscribe if you want more Phoenix Point and more sci-fi gaming from me. And hit the bell icon if you want to get notifications when I release new content. That's all for now. Bye.